Thanks very much, Mikko, and also welcome to this session on my behalf. I'm, as said, Jyrki Ovaska. I'm Head of Technology, CTO in UPM, and it's great to come here in the renewed Dipoli, which I have not seen after the refurbishment. But it's my alma mater in that respect, that I graduated from this Aalto University in '83 from the forest products department, as it was called at that time. So very familiar place for me as well, and good to be here. And I will, in the next 60 minutes or so, I basically will talk about three things in my presentation. First of all, I talk about the UPM transformation story, and because we have been really undergoing and still are undergoing a major transformation, so I'll talk a little bit about that. And that has been a good motivation for us to go for the next area, which is then talking about innovations and what sort of new products and business opportunities do we see in UPM going forward. And that's more or less like the heading of my presentation as well. But as we are also a large energy company, that's one of our businesses, so I'll talk about, and that's also the subject for this lecture series. So the third part will cover then about UPM and energy. How do we see energy markets and energy business in the future? So those sort of three things I will try to cover, and feel free to ask questions also during my presentation. No problem with that. Good. Let's get started then. Really briefly, I guess UPM generally is pretty well known in Finland. We're one of the major corporations, so-called blue chip companies. I guess in each country there are some, and I guess we perhaps are one of them in Finland. 10 billion euros. We employ 19,300 people. We were at the tops employing 34,000 people some 10 years ago. So. And our turnover was the same. It was 6 business areas. Biorefining basically covers chemical pulp, biofuels, timber, those sort of businesses, high growth environment. We are a large energy company. I'll have a separate section for that, so don't cover that too much. So we operate in the energy markets big time. UPM Raflatac is a label materials division. We are number 2 in the world in self-adhesive labels that you will find on beverage bottles or wine bottles or whatever packaging actually in the shops, and a lot of internet packages and mailings. You have this. It's a high growth business, very global one for us. And then paper side is divided, as said, in 2 parts. Our declining paper business, Paper Europe and North America. That's a business that roughly goes 4-5% per annum down. Demand growth, whereas specialty papers is still growing quite handsomely. And that's mainly related to label papers, some packaging end uses, as well as office papers in Asia Pacific. We are also a big producer of plywood. We are actually the largest in Europe, which is a building material used for various applications. Maybe the fanciest one, the recent one, is in LNG tankers. When you transport liquefied natural gas in these huge bell type of vessels, so those basically insulation material made of birch plywood. So that's to name one example. And then we are developing a lot of new bio-based businesses, and I'll talk more about those, which we hope someday will also complement these business areas hopefully in a relevant and large scale. Good. Yeah, of course, please.
What is the biggest sector?
Biggest
Turnover.
Biggest sector, I think, still is paper E&A. I think it's roughly 40%, 35-40%. Paper business is a bit roughly half. But biorefining is growing very rapidly, and it's a large business as well. So those are the 2 largest ones. All right. So we have a lot of tradition as well. So we've been in the business for 140 years, and last year actually we had a centennial party in being a stock-listed company. And I say this not only that, this would be, other than, of course, we are proud of it, but it also shows that we have some resilience and in the company to manage change and fundamental changes in the business environment. Because during those 100 years, there have been a couple of world wars, 2 financial meltdowns, the collapse of the Soviet Union, and some other stuff. And anyway, we've been able to manage, for 100 years, and I guess that's a good starting point. But we need to keep changing all the time. But it has not always been that fancy. So we have also been facing disruption. We were one of the first industry branches that actually felt digitalization in its business big time, some 10 years ago. And that really was a difficult time for our company because, our main business, which was the paper business, was starting to melt down. We didn't know how quickly that would happen. Basically, the reason was that even if paper consumption, like here in Europe, has sustained pretty well, even if there's been introduction of many technologies over the decades, but something happened there around the millennium time. Actually, the paper demand started to decline in 2007 when it reached its peak. And that was primarily broadband internet. It was the introduction of social media. It was of course, new smartphones, smart devices. So first, actually, advertising had also new channels to go, and then consumers have also going into that direction. That has been a driver for this change in graphic paper business. But this is only 1/5 of our businesses in UPM. All the other ones are luckily growth businesses. And now we are in a secular decline, some 4-5% per annum. And if it stays like that, that is manageable. But if it would, collapse some 30% a year, 40% a year, then it would be no can do. Luckily, that gives us time to build new businesses to replace actually those margins and profits that we have traditionally been making in the paper side. Well, the good thing was also that simultaneously, this is from World Watch Institute. Their projection for the world going forward is that there is a new wave coming, and that's the bio-based wave, or a wave of sustainability. It's about renewable energy, green chemicals, in ecology, and green nanotechnology. And it was interesting that we have been actually, we have been for more than 100 years in this business, by the way. Not in every aspect of them, but this is already it's very much what we have been doing, unlike, for instance, the 5th wave, which is of course by no means over yet. But nevertheless, that offers us great opportunities as an industry branch, and that we have started to take a forward lean and put a lot of emphasis in our development work going forward. And if the world and if the future is anything like UN basically is recently expecting that the world would need some, let's say, 50% more of nutrition and energy and 30% more clean water, then I think we have a role to play also as part of the solution in that respect. And that offers us also then great opportunities for bio-based innovations. And many times, and that's the common factor, not only for UPM, but the forest products industry, is that we have some strengths as a starting point. So first of all, we have a certified raw material chain, so it's a third-party certified chain of custody for raw material. It's a bit different than if you think about the fossil value chain. And normally, if you can develop businesses based on biomass, the CO2 reduction is about 70-80%. That's the same in biofuels. It's the same in biochemicals. Many times, if you have wood plastic composite materials, 50% reduction. And there are a lot of brand owners that are extremely interested about this sort of development to lower their own carbon footprint currently. Our business is of course very much the forest biomass, and that's very much what is called to be the second generation biomass. It has a lot of strengths compared to the first generation crops-based biomass. First of all, it is of course renewable, fully recyclable. It's competitive. It's amply available in the world. It's non-volatile. You know, when it comes to the price structure of if you compare it to oil and gas, as an example, we can complain about the high cost of wood in Finland, as an example, but it's very stable in comparison to oil and gas. It's CO2 neutral. And in many food applications, it's also and we can even prove that it's not genetically manipulated. So there are a lot of good things, and we also process a lot of this forest, as you can see, or wood raw material, not only in Finland, but well, anyway, 28 million. So and we do process that also in other areas of the world. And currently 80+% of our wood is certified, and we have a public target to go up for 100% by 2030. So we think that that's a very good wood raw material. Raw material for many products, and this is now for when we talk broadly about what are the products that in the forest products industry and its companies are considering. So you can find it over here. It's a bit like on top of the current products, pulp, paper, wood products. There are increasingly more coming into other interesting products, packaging solutions. Packaging is a big growth market. There are a lot of biopolymers and bioplastics that one can make. Basically, oil and gas is organic matter in a sedimented form. So from the molecular point of view, you basically can do all the same stuff that you can do from oil and gas. So main question is, do you have a technology that is cost effective to do it? Biocomposite materials, intelligent wood products and wood structures. You have nanocellulose. We also had here in the Otaniemi campus together with VTT and Aalto University for 7 years a nanocenter studying also applications for nanocellulose in various type of industrial end uses, but it can also be in biomedical and even cosmetics. Biochemicals, one can make a lot of, I'll talk more about that, as well as of course energy, renewable energy. I guess the forest products industry covers roughly 2/3 of the renewable energy in Finland, as an example. So we are big time in that respect, and we also are making renewable fuels for traffic. So quite a lot of, and of course various forest products companies, they come from different directions, and they have a different portfolio of existing businesses, so they of course have different agendas as they approach these new opportunities. And I will talk, of course, now for coming this onwards from UPM's point of view. But please.
On my understanding concerning the nanocell, that something like more than half of the IPs in the world actually have been done here together with you and VTT and Aalto. But are there some commercial success actually also based on that? Or that extensive research what has been done?
Well, I will show you what we have done, and certainly I think we were maybe a bit too early. The markets, it has happened, this would not be the first technology that would have been evolved a bit early when the market hasn't been ready for industrial uses, as an example. But of course we have developed a lot of IPR, and that can be kept active and reactivated, you know, if the market matures. But yeah, quite a lot of activity going on, but I'll show what we are doing in that respect. So we basically, some 10 years ago, we defined that, then when the tagline came that, you know, we want to be the front runner in the new forest products industry, which means that it's consisting of existing products and increasingly more of the new bio-based products. And that's when this tagline was developed, and we've been also putting a lot of emphasis after that in various development. This shows also that what sort of a transformation in the portfolio of businesses have happened in UPM the past roughly 10 years. You can see that on the upper hand you have our growth businesses, which are basically everything else than paper E&A. So paper we've been losing 1.3 billion of top line in 10 years. So it's a decent sized company in the Finnish stock exchange that we have lost during that time frame. But we have also invested heavily on our growth businesses, and by doing so we have been able to stay put in terms of size. Luckily, profitability has even improved, so the company is in pretty good shape. And that's why we have been able also to invest in development of new businesses, which is of course taking a lot of effort, patience, resources and money, and belief that they will someday then turn out to be profitable businesses. Talking about this transformation playbook, I think that it's also, I would like to stress that this is not only about old and new or bad or good. You know, this is both. This is really as it presents itself in a company, that you need to manage this change every month, every year, and years onwards. And there also the existing business, even the paper E&A in our case, has an extremely important role to generate the cash that we basically then going to use in developing other businesses. Because not many companies are basically able to do that sort of development, and especially first thing, if the cash flow generation starts to cough, this is what is taken out first. So 80% of our development spend is going actually in the new and growth businesses. So it's that was only some 6-7 years ago. It was the other way around. So 30% in new, 70% into the existing. A lot of change. So and the whole R&D, business development, venturing type of thing has changed quite dramatically in the past few years. Already started before my time as a CTO, so I don't take the credit of that alone. It's the whole team. So that's about UPM, and also some of those ideas that, you know, the transformation story. Any questions at this stage before I move more specifically on what we are doing, please? Biggest challenge concerning sustainability is, I would say, maybe EU regulation. I would say, and maybe regulation as large, is that it is so unpredictable that what happens, for instance, for the sustainability criteria of wood raw material. This is going to be quite important. We know that, you know, we have a good story to tell, but, you know, it can be that, you know, there happens decisions that are not, at least not in the favor of developing these sort of developments that I'm soon going to talk about in Finland, because Finland might be hit, not other regions and jurisdictions of the world. Go ahead. Energy crops, we are testing, and it has been also in the public for our biofuels next step development, carinata crops, the winter crops in Uruguay, as a potential feedstock for biofuels. Other than that, we are not interested too much about feedstocks which are competing with the land area that could be utilized for nutrition, because overpopulation of the world doesn't favor that sort of a trend. Go ahead.
You mentioned the GMOs and is it a strategy chosen for on relation to purchase, or is there more to it?
No, it's not only public relations. Okay, it might be part of that as well, but it is a thing that various regions in the world are also different in this respect. North Americans, South Americans, Asians are pretty. They're pretty easy on this issue. They don't care too much. So it's more accepted in those regions. But in Europe, that is not the case. So GMO generally as a concept is not favored at all in any areas. And that comes from the history of European economic development. And I think that works for our favor in that respect. But in some chemical applications, for instance, then first generation sugar-based alternatives, which is made of corn coming from US, nobody can prove that it has not been genetically modified in Europe, which might be a blockage for selling those sort of products in Europe. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about innovations. Or did you have a question? Sorry, but would there be any complication?
Yeah, like used for energy and biomass, and some part can be used in food industry. Do you think used for food and biomass would be, is there any?
I think that, certainly if anything that in the long run, if you go, 10, 20, 30 years forward, I think the world will need so much, all the land, much more land need to be dedicated for food production that we currently have. So if you make anything, especially energy out of it, or if you even make fuels out of it, ethanol-based, fuels as an example, or some other stuff, I don't think that it's going to be acceptable in the long run. They are needed also still for many, many years, but in the long run, they will have a tougher time. Good, let's move on. Let's talk about innovation. So I guess that what has happened also, this is not only for the forest products industry, I think this is, I've learned, also found it in one book, so I think this is very typical. I remember when I graduated, and joined the industry, then it was really in the old mode that if you didn't innovate, nothing dramatic happened, only the competition might have catching some space, but if you don't innovate nowadays, you might be toast in 5 years or 10 years. So you have to even innovate to keep still where you are, let alone then talking about growth, having growth in the revenues and in your profits. So I think that this is very true, at least in our case, and that's why we have to be quite active in this field. And we have also defined different roles for this innovation activity in UPM, so that all businesses have a role to play. So it's not only that innovation is needed for the new developments, because it's obvious when you develop something new, biochemical business, that, as an example, that you have to innovate because it doesn't exist. But it's also in mature businesses, you can innovate, like in the cost side. Of course, the cost savings, innovation, we have a fantastic track record in our company for that sort of innovation development in the past years already, for a long time. Or even new business models, new services, ways to go to the market, and so forth. So that's why we need innovation activity in all activities, all businesses. Now, once again, coming back to this wood raw material, I guess that we have traditionally seen that wood is used in the traditional products, but there are ingredients and opportunities that we can use it also for much more than traditionally has been used. Bark and branches, even stumps have been used for bioenergy. Then you have had extractives which are chemicals, the pitch type of chemicals, which you all are used if you have handled pine or spruce trees, that your hands get sticky. Those extractives can be, developed further into, for instance, health chemical health-related products or renewable diesel. Fibers, you can also see this as a source of its chemical components, not only fiber basket of the matrix. So that's, and I think the future is that we will utilize this wood matrix in a very versatile form to maximize, as the chemical industry says, the valorization, the value creation of the activities that we have. So if some area, be it paper, doesn't make much money, then we can find some other areas where money-making capability would be good. And this is another way to show a little bit the same thing. So there are different lenses that we are looking when we are looking at the wood biomass. Of course, traditionally, trees have been used for energy, logs for building materials and sawn goods, other wood products. Fiber is where most of the value creation currently from the forest products industry is being created. Pulp, paper, board, labels, biocomposites, these sort of areas. But the new entry is the molecule lens. And this is a totally new one, hasn't existed for more than, let's say, less than 10 years. And that goes, when we talk about biofuels and biochemicals, those could be drop-in alternatives for fossil-based alternatives. And more we are moving into that direction. Well, some of you might be thinking, okay, why then, why is forest products industry going in this direction? Why doesn't chemical industry, or why doesn't the petrochemical industry do it? They have much bigger muscles. Yes, partly true, and certainly they have larger scales, but these are some of the strengths that we can build on. We have been in this, at the entry of this, in this biomass business. 28 million cubic meters bringing wood to our mills in a year. We have a certain competence that we have built over time, and this is fragmented. It's not an easy way to build a infrastructure to handle large volumes of wood. We are used for forest biomass conversion processes, even chemical ones, and then we operate large mill bioprocesses and large mill sites that are also integrated with energy islands and so forth. So that gives us a good starting point to develop. And now I'll talk then next about the business opportunities more in general, what we have, and they are basically and which we are working on. There are also other opportunities, but biofuels business I will talk a bit later before my energy bit, because that is already up and running. Biocomposites we have developed as well. A business which is a SME size business within UPM, has been there now for 10 years. We are out in lignin business. We are buying lignin from outside sources, and we are formulating them further and developing it to various activities. We are doing this also because we are considering of building a biorefinery, which is making biochemicals, and lignin would be separated from that process at that stage. So that's a big business. And then biofibrils or nanocellulose, we have chosen to go for biomedical end uses. And I'll open up these a little, all of these items in a pretty quick form. Biocomposites, as said, some of you might have heard the brand name UPM Profi, which is used, it's a wood plastic composite material used for decking and terrace patio materials for individuals, families, or businesses that want to upgrade their decks. They want to have a design type of a look in their garden or their terrace with a high quality stone-like look. And there are some examples. The Shanghai World Expo Finnish pavilion was made of a product called UPM Formi. These are the granulates that are shown here in this picture. And the Biofor concept car that we have also, where we have demonstrated how biomaterials could potentially be utilized in an automotive industry. We are not most probably going into the building any cars in the future, but materials for the car industry, yes, that might be something. And then this for me, which is the wood plastic composite material, which is used in extrusion products. Basically, we are talking a lot. We are studying quite a lot the acoustics end use, which offers quite significant opportunities. But there are also other stuff possible in there. Couple of weeks ago, when we came out with our quarterly results, we also published that we intention or a possibility to build a biochemicals biorefinery in Germany, and that we are entering into the phase of pre-engineering and also then we make a more detailed commercial study in the next year or so. And that should we then move ahead sometime in the future for the investment, we talk about a biorefinery that is based on wood biomass, and it would be then it would look like a chemical industry plant having two steps. The first one is basically then would then disintegrate wood into its chemical components. This is a process that nobody in the world has done so far based on wood biomass on an industrial scale. So this is really the novelty. And we've been studying that for roughly 6 years. The step 2 would then be that these industrial sugars, some of the chemists, if there are in the room, C5, C6 sugars, would then be further converted and utilizing more standard chemical conversion processes into chemical building blocks, i.e. chemicals that the chemical industry are then using to make various types of products. And we have even stated 2 weeks ago that we are looking for 2 molecules, large industrial molecules, monoethylene glycol and monopropylene glycol. And then we would separate lignin, which is anyway, a quarter of the weight of the wood is lignin, so that's basically the glue between the fibers, and that lignin would be then also developed into various applications. And there would be some energy also produced. This is a high yield process that we talk about here, and that's what we are going to then study more in detail in the next year. A little bit where could these chemicals then be utilized? And many times chemicals are everywhere. So and various types of products of our everyday life could be used in plastics. This MEG typically is one element of the PET bottles, the beverage bottles. For instance, this type of a bottle, 1/3 of the weight is monoethylene glycol. It can be used in polyester, in textile fibers, and garments, as an example. And there are some, and it can be also utilized simultaneously in de-icing of aircraft, the same molecule. And so you can see that there are a lot of applications, and many times the same chemical can be used even in food application in one sort. And those are drop-in chemicals, which are exactly the same molecules as what is done out of oil or gas. So it can be replaced easily without any performance issues. When it comes to lignin we have already been developing, that is could be developed into various applications, and we have a branded product that we are now selling already in commercial scale to plywood industry to replace phenol-based resins. Once again, phenol, formaldehyde, chemical, oil and gas, based resins, 70-80% reduction, once again with CO2. That's why the industry is so interested about it. and it is sustainable. But it can be also used in various insulation and building materials, or even carbon fibers when going forward. Then about biomedicals, our nanocellulose business. So we've been out now for about 1.5 years in our first commercial product, which is a product for cell cultivation. So pretty far away from the traditional pulp and paper, right? So we found out in all this work that it's a fantastic environment to cultivate human cells of any kind. And that offers us fantastic opportunities to develop solutions for cell culturing, maybe even then development of drugs, and then maybe wound healing platforms or wound healing solutions as well. So this is a relatively new but very high growth environment. Of course, it's a tiny thing, but that is not sold by tons, so that you don't measure it by how many euros we make by selling a ton. This sort of a little thing, which you can see over there, carries the price of let's say between 100 and 200 euros. Good value add. If we can scale it up, of course, if we only sell, smaller volumes, it doesn't make much of a difference, but so forth. Did you have a question? No. Okay. All right. So that's what we are doing there, and now let's move on then to biofuels, and we've been in this journey now for. You can see more than 10 years. This was our first development. I talk this now, even if it's our flagship type of a thing, because this is a good bridge to talk about energy. And there you can see we started the work in 2006. A lot of development work, chose technologies, make a first investment decision in 2012. And our plant in Lappeenranta in the southeastern corner of Finland started up in January 2015, and it's making now and it's running quite well. Makes a product which is very good. It is used extensively in traffic fuels in let's say Scandinavian environment. 180 million investment. No public support was even applied for this. This was done all by UPM money. And now we are, of course, considering then how to go further into this development. And there are some things about this product which is called BioVerno, and that is basically we do a let's say renewable fuel both for diesel and for naphtha areas. Diesel is the main thing, but it also has significantly less tailpipe emissions than conventional diesel has, and it's a solution also to go when you want to, and we want in Europe and in Finland to reduce the CO2 impact of let's say the traffic. The biorefinery looks like this. This is the picture of it, and all these fractions are then we are able basically then to define into industrial products in various industries. Even the side products, sodium bisulfate, pitch, as well as turpentine, they can be sold to other areas. The raw material for this plant has been crude tall oil, which is a residue from a chemical pulp mill. But also for future purposes, we are studying a lot of other feedstocks than crude tall oil, even so starting from solid wood. That could be one option going forward. And this naphtha fraction is also quite interesting because that can be used as a biocomponent in gasoline, as well as develop further into bioplastics or certain biochemicals. So we've been here now for for 2 years, and already last year, and that has been disclosed by our CEO, that it has made black numbers. So it has been also reaching break even pretty quickly after the startup. Then some words about the biofuels. Okay, many of us think about, why bother making biofuels, because they're going to be electrical vehicles anyway that at the end of the day will be there, and right it might be, but I just had a look at a recent study by Bloomberg which expected that by 2040, so more than 20 years from now, 70% of the new cars will be electric, of the new cars. But as the car population changes relatively slowly, only 38% of the car population in Europe by 2040 will be electrical vehicles. So more than, let's say, 2/3 will still be using other feedstocks than electric. So in that sense, I think at least for that time period, there will be plenty of room for engine development, and there will be plenty of room for renewable fuels in EU, and of course this is only EU, and that's why we feel confident that that offers business opportunities for us going forward in this business. Now I'd like to move then next on to my last chapter of this presentation. But if there are some questions currently that you stop on your mind, maybe I could take them. Please go ahead.
Like right now, you and Neste are both producing renewable diesel.
Yeah.
Do you think there's like market share for biogas to be used as a fuel, or are you like now basically only on diesel?
Well, our focus is very much on the, let's say, biofuels, both for diesel and for petrol engines as a biofeedstock. Biogas is an opportunity, but we have so much on our plate that we can do everything. So I guess that we will concentrate, at least for the time being, on these liquid feedstocks, because there we can also expand it into heavy traffic, marine. We are also testing actually in marine use of these diesel engines in the Netherlands. There's opportunities to go to aviation, develop these even further into that field. So I don't know whether we need biogas in that sense, but time will tell. We don't close the doors either.
How about biokerosene?
Well, that is certainly one option going forward, and it's there in our R&D side, but it'll take some time. It certainly will take some time. You had a question as well.
Yes, about the manufacturing of diesel products. How big share of the energy used in that is heat, and how much is electricity, or it doesn't vary a lot?
In the manufacturing of this biofuel?
Yes.
Now I don't know even exactly, and even if I knew, I don't know whether I would like to, say it to you. It requires a certain amount of primary energy output input in terms of electricity or power, certainly. And also steam is needed. So it is a hydrogenation process is also requiring energy as well. So both are needed, but that's why it's also good to operate in an environment where you have a pulp and paper mill environment. You have some surplus energy that you can utilize actually for this purpose. All right.
Do you have commercial production of biofuels from other feedstocks than salt oil?
Well, as I said, we are testing this carinata crops, winter crops in Uruguay. We have, I'm not sure whether we have yet run it in our plants, but we have an intention to do so, and testing that as well. So that's not during the winter time when there is no crops production, so that is being tested there in a targeted form. Sorry, now I don't understand what do you mean by the...
What is the main byproduct of the hydrolyzation of the cellulose to the nanocrystalline scale?
In which process?
In hydrolyzation,
Hydrolyzation for what product?
nanocellulose.
Nanocellulose. No, well, basically, there is not really much of a side product coming from that process. It's pretty much going into the whole, developed into that field. So there are not really major side products.
Okay, so you have like technology that is
Yeah, we have.
the chains.
Yeah, we have developed a lot of IPR. Maybe that is an area where we might have most patent in any given area in our business. So that's the work that we've been doing, over the. If you want to get interested, so you can study, our patents. There you can certainly find some more insights. Good. Go ahead.
What is the current state of nanocellulose products? So can we find like the nanocellulose in ready products?
Not really, not in our case, because that mainly goes for laboratories all over the world, and it goes for, let's say, research communities. For instance, a good example is that our team, which is developing these biomedical solutions and the materials, they are located in Biomedicum in the HUS hospital here in Helsinki, together with the research teams. And
So it's still like the research phase of
it's research and early commercialization phase. That's right. I would say more moving now to commercialization rather than research anymore. Please.
If you agree that your market for biofuels in Europe is primarily driven by national and EU level obligations for reducing carbon emissions and transport all specific biofuel emissions, how do you regard your competitiveness with biofuels from other sources, and where do you like to sit in the market, also in terms of, say, sustainability, and versus electric vehicles as another way to reduce CO2 emissions? How do you kind of see that?
Well, I guess that, generally quite well. I guess that we, first of all, we have had the double counting system for wood raw material based on the first generation biomass. So that has been a big help. And that is, of course, that we hope that would continue going forward. I guess EVs are such that, let's remember, those are not totally environmentally, having no environmental effects. We need to understand, this is already now going into the energy side, that how is the energy going to be produced, what the EVs are using. And to answer your question, I should need to know more about how, against which are we comparing, because many times the impression is that there are no emissions when you drive EVs. That's not the case. There are emissions, but we need to study and maybe make some research on that as well going forward. Okay, maybe I'll move on then to the energy business. As I mentioned, we are also a large energy company. We are actually number one actually as a single user of energy in Finland, and number two supplier. So we have a unique opportunity to see both the industrial use dynamics of energy, as well as what it takes when you are an energy generator. And half of our energy is being produced in our energy business, which are mainly then, let's say, non-integrated hydro assets. It's nuclear ownership that we have through PVO in Olkiluoto. Then we have a lot also condensing power through our subsidiary companies as well. And then we have half of that is basically generated at the mill sites, where we consume a lot of energy as well. And then you can see that it's not only in Finland. That part is also everywhere where we operate. We have a CA beach plant normally. Many of them are based on bio feedstocks, and then a turbine to make energy out of there as well, which we need. So that's where we are. The traditional value chain of the power market looks a bit like that. And for some of you, it might be a surprise that UPM is such a large power company because you have never heard about it. But the reason is that we are not in the retail market, so we are not selling it to private households energy. We sell all our energy to the Nordic energy market, and we also buy all our energy in the consuming businesses from that market. And that's why we are in generation and in the power market business when it comes to our energy business area. And then it's about running the assets, managing the associated companies. It's about physical sales and also managing the volatility. It's hedging, trading, and forecasting and market intel. And that's basically what our business is about. But this value chain, by the way, is going to change. This is how it has looked traditionally. And what will stay is that somebody will generate, and of course it's not a bad thing in the future either if you have low-cost generation capability. Somebody has to do the generation part. There will always be usage for, let's say, the consumers of electricity as well. But almost anything there in between will change. And maybe the fuels, the feedstocks are changing as well. There are not a lot of renewables coming into the picture. And so in that sense, we are again looking in one of our businesses a little bit into the eyes of a disruption. Now, what this disruption then is is consisting of, there are some fundamental changes taking place in the area which is affecting us, for example, as UPM in the Nordic and European energy landscape. More weather-related intermittent capacity coming, wind, solar, especially maybe local CHP, biomass-based, and a lot of interconnections, so that the Finnish and Scandinavian electricity markets are much more interconnected with the rest of Europe and the continental Europe, which means that that will have a huge impact. Also, industrial users will become much more sophisticated in the way that they consume power, and that will have a huge impact. We have been already practicing that quite a bit. Well, the current profitability level of, let's say, traditional energy producers is in the doldrums. Nobody is investing, and there's no financial incentive currently to invest in new capacity. Digitalization is really coming big time into the energy sector, and conventional business models are being eroded as we speak. So, and on top of that, if that's not enough, this is a business where you have regulation basically written all over it. Local and national regulation in Finland with different types of schemes, subsidy models in the EU, exactly the same. So, which makes it even more difficult. So, it is going to be quite tough. Let's have a couple of other views. These are some of the interconnectors that are being built in here in Europe, and as we are becoming more connected to the Central European, even UK areas, where there's more weather-related energy generation, the more it will have impact on our markets over here. Volatility and everything that comes with it. And as solar and wind has really gained a lot of importance, especially in Germany after their nuclear decision and huge investments, these are two representative weeks from early part of, week 19 from 2016, and then there's a week 4 in this year. There you can see that first one, the week there on the upper side, a lot of solar power, a lot of wind available. There you can see that the cost level has been quite low because they have always the ability then to put the power into the grid. And there are also, even in time, as you can see there in at the end of that week that the price has been negative. And this is happening more and more, especially in Germany, that momentarily power prices are negative. And whereas then there are another week when there's no sunshine, there is not much of a wind, and all of a sudden then, and more imports coming to Germany as well. They even see that it can be, say, 150 euros for a couple of days. The cost of the power, and it doesn't really show that there are changes within a day. Even can be similar type of fluctuations. This volatility, price volatility, is enormous these days, and this is something that actors in the energy sector need to manage much better. Renewable energy is also becoming much more competitive all the time. So, and this has been, if only some 3 years ago, the cost of energy in area of wind or even photovoltaic, which is the solar energy, was maybe close to 3 times that of, let's say, conventional condensing energy. So basically, currently, it's almost the same. Most probably, if you go a couple of years further down, it will be lower than that of condensing power. And well, maybe the point is that there's no need for subsidies anymore. That's another, maybe what the authorities should learn clearly in any form. But on the other hand, but this will have a fundamental effect, because as the let's say traditional industry, condensing industry, is having financial difficulties, there's been a lot of balancing power capacity that has been slashed everywhere. And now this balancing seems to be built into the system as we go forward in a novel way. So we're talking about that this business model is going from a supply-driven model, which is the traditional one, into a model which is really decentralized supply, but primarily demand-driven. And there are a lot of smart activities which are coming, and that's digitalization and ways to manage the volatility. And then, of course, power storages, which is there in the bottom, especially in the transport electrification, which is also coming to hopefully help. EVs can actually play a big role helping balancing the energy, the power markets going forward. So big change, and it's not automatic that the traditional power companies are making money or are making money in the similar business model that they did in the past. Most probably not. These disruptive technologies are also changing how both power is generated and consumed. Low carbon technologies, also small nuclear reactors might be coming. There's discussion around it. CHP is also developing going forward on top of solar, wind and biomass. A lot of system integration technologies like the energy storages in various forms, battery, thermal energy storages, power to X, maybe pumped hydro. And then, as I said, these digital information and communication technologies are really becoming big time, or has already been. We've seen quite staggering mergers, or let's say acquisitions rather, of digital capability companies that the traditional energy companies have been buying in the recent months in order to tackle, because all of these are capabilities that actually the traditional power companies not necessarily don't have. Demand response technologies, smart energy systems, and so forth, sensors, remote analysis, those sort of stuff will become more and more general. There's quite an interesting development also going on in Finland in this field, and I've also happened to be the chairman of Click Innovation, and that has been developing a model for the Finnish government in terms of this smart and flexible energy system. concerning the Åland Islands. So it's a bit like a microcosm of certain energy usage and also production capabilities. And we could test some of these new novelties in this type of an environment, including regulation. It would require that the regulation would also be changed accordingly so that it would be fit for this type of a new power market. And as you can see, it's been on a press release from our ministry not that long ago, and the discussions are going on. So this could be an interesting thing. And might be a way where also Finnish companies, many types of companies, could gain some knowledge that could be new export articles for going forward. Well, what we are in UPM also considering is more to develop capabilities in this digital field and also thinking of, okay, how could we develop some new businesses, utilize, for instance, flexibility, industrial flexibility in the system. And well, if the left traditional side is very much about operating in the traditional stock or the power market, or then the next day market, which is the spot area, new focus is very much about intraday activities, FinGrid, balancing the grid, or even offering reserves for the grid to be able to operate under any circumstances. And that could offer opportunities, and digitalization is a big thing over there. So it's also in this respect a tool for transformation. And we've been also trying to learn in the last few years, the working methods with the startups and also with various actors in the digital world. We've been in hackathons as well, 3 times in the Slush, also going there later this month for the 4th time. Also to get ideas how to tackle and also connections, and we've got even more or less copied a working method which we call a Bio4 boot camp to develop ideas and innovations. Many times they are digital innovations that are taking place. One has been done also in the area of energy. And as we're talking about hackathons, as it happens, in less than 2 weeks' time, we will have also a flexible energy hackathon that we organize in our Jämsänkoski mill in central Finland. And that is facilitated by Industry Hack. And that is really then to figure out ideas, how can we get new ideas for this industrial flexible use of energy. And so that'll be interesting to see the outcome of that. And we'll see more and more of these sort of events going forward. So as a summary, I would say from all these three areas, we are in a pretty good shape as a starting point going forward to the future. So that if you hear still talk about that, forest products industry is a sunset business, hopefully I've been able to shed some light that it's not. Actually, it's a sun-dawn business. So, and we have a lot of opportunities. It's really in our minds then to figure out how we can really utilize it to our benefit. So, thanks very much for your attention. And now, of course, there could be some time for some questions still. Please.
Yes, I'm interested in you had these small hydros in the industrial site. So do you have like pumping storage?
No, we don't have pumping storages as of yet. We have, of course, we manage the water levels in the rivers, and that's our storage. In that sense, that we utilize hydro also based on what the market offers. So that's some kind of a balancing power form, of course, which is quite nice. And but also there are certain limits that we we can manipulate the water level upstream in the river systems. There are also strict regulations on it. Please.
How is it if you produce electricity at the mill site? You have a CHP power plant always.
Yeah.
Do you first sell it to the electricity market and then the mill buys it from the market, or do you use it inside the mill?
Well, that's a good thing. Of course, I guess if it's possible to wire it so that we utilize the, we practically will do it. But the price formation happens over the grid, and strangely enough, even in those mill sites that we are operating in, which is in a fenced area, and we are doing both. We are consuming the energy and we are generating. We have to pay the electricity tax for all the power what we are producing. One might ask whether that makes sense, but that is what we have to do in Finland, not in other countries.
A follow-up question, what about the transmission costs? Do you have to pay those also when you work in the markets, or do you get exception for that if you really...
Now I have to say that I really don't know.
Okay.
So I'm sorry that I can't. I don't believe that, most probably not within the mill side if we are using over there. So if we are using the grid, then of course we'll need to carry the transmission costs. Please.
Do you feel that you say that the flexible industry necessity is like new business for you? Do you feel that, let's say, power costs could be an issue that also affects your production of materials and stuff like that? So now you're producing pulp or paper,
Yeah.
but now in the future you will have a lot of more products. Could it be that it could be a big driver?
It can be a big. I would say it's more so for maybe it could be a positive side for the paper production, especially the one which is declining, because they might have a new opportunity to capitalize on this on these fluctuation which is there, because if they are not running full, utilizing their capacity full and offering that flexibility to the market, no, of course not for free, but for a certain price tag. So it could be a new profit source for such business. And of course we are in a business of, we want to make some profits as well. So in that sense we are looking for these opportunities. Good. Thanks. Well, one more over there.
What is your approximate from the materials chemicals compared to the fuels, biofuels?
Well, we have not. This is not a reporting unit in our case. We are not disclosing what we are, how much money we are making with that one plant. It's of course in the whole scheme of UPM. Still, it is only one plant, so it's relatively small. But it certainly has potential to scale up. And as I mentioned, we're studying various alternatives how we could do that. So thanks very much for coming and being so active as an audience. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.